even if wrongly managed, kills. If well managed, helps. Now, that makes it worth talking about. I am Khalid Aminat and you are watching TTKS, that is Topkids Klub show. Let's talk about stress. After this time out, I'll be right back.
Calling parenting an uneasy task would be the understatement of the century. It's complicated, it's constant, and the stakes are sky high. Some parents can't stop worrying that they're gonna mess it up or that their kid's gonna have it tough. According to some statistics though, most parents are confident in their skills. They're sure they've taught important lessons and instilled good values in their children. Well, that could be the case, but it also might not be. We've checked with the best psychologists to come up with a list of 8 bad lessons a lot of parents unknowingly teach their kids. But don't worry, we've also provided some healthy alternatives that'll help you raise your kids to become strong, confident, and self-sufficient adults. Bad lesson number 1. Snitching is wrong. When children complain to their parents about something another kid did, parents all too often respond with something like, "Nobody likes a tattletale." The lesson is don't be a snitch, and many parents think that it's a good rule to follow. And yeah, it seems admirable to encourage kids to solve their own problems, but that's not what ends up happening in this case. Unfortunately, when it comes to children taught that telling on others is bad, psychologists have noticed a tendency to avoid talking about real problems at school. If a kid is being bullied, or even worse, abused by an adult, the child may not talk about it for fear of being labeled a snitch. Plus, if a child gets used to keeping secrets from you, it makes it more likely they'll do the same thing in the future. What should you teach instead? Be open and honest. Parents should teach their kids to talk openly about unfair or difficult situations, and be patient if some of the stories they tell don't really seem like a big deal through the eyes of an adult. A child can't always tell when they need help with something. That's why you should work together to figure out when your kid can resolve a problem themselves versus when they need your help.
Stress. Stress is your body's response to a demanding situation. This increases your heart rate, regulate your blood pressure, expand or constrict the capacity of your lungs and tense your muscles. Before you are fully aware of what is happening, your body is primed for action. When a stressful episode is over, your body comes off high alert and returns to normal.
In our fast-paced world, stress can seem part of everyday life. And recent Bupa research showed that 2 out of 5 people, that's 44%, currently feel stressed. Stress can be a very positive part of life. If we didn't feel any stress or anxiety, we probably wouldn't do many of the things we have to do. The problem comes if that level of stress is sustained for too long. So it's either too high and/or it continues for too long without a break. The persistence of stress is very important, and the Bupa research has shown that slightly over a quarter of people report the stress persisting for over a year, and it's this persistence that can have a negative impact on health. Stress originates in a very primitive and quite basic mechanism to fight and flight to avoid danger. And what happens is if you are exposed to some sort of threat, there is an outpouring of hormones, and it's a quite complex mechanism, but it optimizes your ability to run or to fight.
Let's dig in more. Stress in early childhood. It is not uncommon for children to suffer from stress. Some are bullied at school or neglected at home. Others are abused physically, emotionally, or sexually. Many are anxious about exams and school grades. Still, others see their family torn apart by divorce.
Are you sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus. like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus-pituitary-adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are swapped. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after her. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable.
Stressed children may have nightmares, learning difficulties, depression, or a tendency to be withdrawn. Some seem unable to control their emotions. A child suffering from stress needs urgent help. Good and bad stress. Stress is a natural response that enables you to deal with challenging or dangerous situations. The stress response begins in your brain. Beneficial stress enables you to act or react quickly. A certain amount of stress can also help you to reach your goals or to perform better, perhaps during an exam, a job interview, or a sporting event.
Chronic stress can also lead to substance abuse and other unhealthy means of coping. It may even spiral into depression, burnout, or thoughts of suicide.
Alcohol and tobacco use among high school seniors is trending down. But the CDC says the use of illicit drugs, we're talking about things like heroin and synthetic opioids, is rising among high school and college-age students. Psychologists who work with young people say stress is playing a key role in this disturbing trend. Joining me now to explain is Dr. Christine Caulfield. She's the CEO of LSF Health Systems. Good morning. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I think what is important here is, everybody knows about the dangers of heroin, certainly, but, we hear opioids, and I think that what we need to remind our viewers who maybe don't have a kid that comes home every day, like grandparents as an example, this is the prescription drugs that's in their medicine cabinet, and who counts them to know that when Johnny or Jane come to visit, for the holidays or something, that they might have taken something.
Exactly, and we're finding at LSF Health Systems that is exactly what's happening. The access to medicine cabinets, to the unused hydrocodone, for example, oxycontins, is what the kids are taking. And what they don't understand is some of the other drugs that they're experimenting with, such as cocaine, is laced with these synthetic opioids, which is dangerous, fatal.
And we have seen with fentanyl. You have no idea that this is in this, and it takes, I've read it takes just a little bit under your nail of fentanyl to be mixed with something, and it will kill you.
It will, and you can't smell it, you can't taste it, so these kids do not know that what they're ingesting may be laced with fentanyl.
So another reason to have that conversation, particularly if you've got a college student who's home for the holidays, getting ready to head back, keep that in mind. And there are certain stressors also that I think are important to talk about as well, because there is this just pressure. I know that when we were young it was the same thing about doing well in school, and of course with all of the social media that's going on, that kind of online pressure that these young kids are exposed to.
Exactly. What we're finding at LSF Health Systems, the kids are telling us that there are three main things that are really pushing them over the edge, so to speak. One is parental pressure. Two is the class expectations, really making the grades. And three is really trying to fit in with their peers. And these three combined are often pushing these kids to self-medicate.
And, it's tough because you hear something like that. I'll be the first one to admit that with my kids, I really insist upon good grades and hard work. Is there a line that you cross as a parent? If you've been kind of pushing your college-age student to do better in school, particularly that freshman year and kind of that beginning when they go away, those grades drop. How do you have that conversation with them where you're not putting too much stress on them?
Yes, well, there is a balance, and you're absolutely right. And, saying it with love, that you want them to succeed, but you love them no matter what. The unconditional message, so that they don't feel that they're a failure if they bring home a C, for example, that they're okay and you're going to do whatever you can to help them succeed, whether it bring in a tutor or give them whatever support they might need to increase their grades, for example.
So are there some warning signs then that parents need to be aware of then, of high school age in particular and college age, that maybe there is an illicit drug problem going on with their child?
Yes, I would definitely look for the following. I would look for unusual behaviors. If you normally have a child that's very upbeat and suddenly you're noticing depressed mood, withdrawal, isolation, that certainly is one key factor. Lethargy, depression, sudden changes in their social life. There's new friends that are coming in that you haven't met before, and you might have a gut feeling that this is not the crowd that you want your child to be engaged with.
Why stress does not affect everybody in the same way? It can contribute to a wide range of diseases, and it can nearly affect every part of the body.
It's not all bad news, though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control of you.
Now you've learned a little about stress from our today's presentations. From Topkids Klub, we say avoid stress that kills. I am Khalid Aminat and you are watching Topkids Klub show. Thanks for watching. Bye.